Starting today, you'll clean the music room every afternoon at 3 o'clock sharp. The timing is important. Don't be late." Mrs. Kapoor turned back to her clipboard without another word. Maya stood there confused. That was it? No mention of yesterday? No anger about touching the piano? She wanted to ask questions, but she'd learned that Mrs. Kapoor didn't appreciate staff questioning her decisions. So Maya simply nodded and went about her morning chores. The whole day, her stomach churned with nervous energy. Why specifically 3 o'clock? Why was the timing so important? By the time the old clock in the hallway chimed 3 times, Maya's hands were sweating as she pushed her cleaning cart toward the music room. The door was already slightly open. She knocked softly and pushed it wider. Ethan was there sitting on the floor near the piano, waiting. Maya's breath caught. So this wasn't a coincidence. Someone knew what had happened yesterday. Someone had arranged this. But who and why? The boy looked up at her with those same large, sad eyes. But today there was something else in them too. Hope, maybe, or expectation. "Hello," Maya said softly, even though she knew he wouldn't respond. Mrs. Kapoor had made it clear that the boy didn't speak. "I'm supposed to clean in here now." Ethan stood up and walked to the piano. He pulled out the bench and patted it, looking at her. Maya glanced around nervously. "I don't think I should. Yesterday was a mistake. I could get in trouble." The boy's face fell. His shoulders slumped and he looked down at the floor. The sadness that washed over his features broke something in Maya's heart. He looked so small, so desperately lonely. She thought about her own little brother back in the village. How he'd look at her with those pleading eyes when he wanted her to play with him. How could she refuse this child the same kindness? "All right," she whispered. "Just for a little while. But then I really do need to clean." Ethan's face lit up. It wasn't quite a smile, but it was close. Maya sat down at the piano and began to play the same folk song from yesterday. The boy immediately sat beside her on the bench, watching her fingers move across the keys with complete focus. As Maya played, she started to relax. The music always did that to her. It was like coming home, like talking to an old friend. When she finished the song, Ethan touched the piano keys gently, mimicking the last few notes she'd played. "You want to learn?" Maya asked. He nodded eagerly, and so it began. Maya showed him where to place his fingers, how to press the keys gently to make them sing. She taught him a simple melody, just 5 notes repeated. Ethan concentrated so hard his tongue stuck out slightly, and when he got the pattern right, his whole face brightened. They spent 30 minutes together before Maya insisted she had to actually clean the room. Ethan sat on the window seat and watched her work, not leaving even when she finished. Only when Mrs. Kapoor's voice called from somewhere in the house did he finally slip away. This same scene repeated itself day after day. Every afternoon at 3 o'clock, Maya would arrive at the music room and find Ethan waiting. She'd play for him, teach him simple melodies, and watch as slowly, bit by bit, some light returned to his eyes. The boy was a fast learner. Within a week, he could play several simple songs. He still never spoke, but he communicated in other ways. A nod for yes, a shake of his head for no. He'd point at the sheet music on the piano when he wanted Maya to play something new. Sometimes he'd even grab her hand and place it back on the keys when she tried to stop and clean. Maya started bringing some old sheet music from the village church. Simple hymns and folk songs that weren't too difficult. Ethan absorbed everything like a sponge. She began to look forward to these afternoons more than anything else in her week. It reminded her of learning with her grandmother, that special bond formed through shared music. What Maya didn't realize was that every single day, from various hidden spots in the house, Richard Chen watched them. Sometimes he stood in the hallway just out of sight. Other times he watched from the garden through the large windows. Once he'd actually hidden behind the heavy curtains in the music room itself, barely breathing as his son played piano for the first time since his mother's death. Richard had made the decision that first day. When he'd seen his son's tears, seen the emotion break through the wall of silence, he knew this girl was special. He'd quietly instructed Mrs. Kapoor to change Maya's schedule. He'd made sure the music room was always unlocked at 3 o'clock. He'd watched from the shadows as his son slowly came back to life. The expensive child psychologist had told Richard that Ethan needed time, that grief couldn't be rushed. They'd given him pamphlets and strategies and medications. None of it had worked. But this simple girl with her simple songs was reaching his son in ways all the experts couldn't. Richard began to research Maya's background. He had resources, connections. Within a week, he knew everything. Her father worked construction but had a bad back injury that prevented him from taking on heavy jobs. The medical bills were crushing the family. Her mother took in sewing work, staying up late into the night to finish orders. Her younger siblings attended the village school, but would probably have to drop out soon to help earn money. Maya herself had once won a regional piano competition when she was 12. The prize had been a scholarship to study at a music school in the city. But her father had gotten injured that same year, and Maya had turned down the scholarship to work instead. She'd given up her dreams to support her family. Richard found himself thinking about Maya even when he wasn't watching her with Ethan. There was something pure about her, something genuine in a world where everyone wanted something from him. She didn't know who he really was, didn't know his wealth or power. To her, he was just the distant master of the house, and she was content to remain invisible. One evening, Richard sat in his study going through documents, but his mind was elsewhere. He could hear piano music drifting up from downstairs. Ethan was practicing the songs Maya had taught him. His son was playing music again. His son was showing emotion again. Richard made some phone calls that night. Quiet calls to people who owed him favors. He set things in motion. Careful plans that would unfold slowly. But he didn't tell Maya anything, not yet. He wanted to be sure, wanted to observe more, wanted to understand exactly what was happening between this village girl and his son. 3 weeks passed. Ethan's progress was remarkable. He could now play 10 different songs from memory. Sometimes Maya would catch him almost humming along as he played, though no actual words came out. He'd started making eye contact with her, even offering small gestures that might have been the beginnings of smiles. Then one afternoon, something changed. Maya arrived at the music room at exactly 3 o'clock as always, but Ethan wasn't sitting quietly like usual. He rushed up to her the moment she entered, grabbed her hand and pulled her to the piano with urgent energy. He pointed at the keys, then at her, then at the sheet music. He was bouncing slightly, excited about something. "You want to show me something?" Maya asked. Ethan nodded vigorously. He sat down at the piano, positioned his small hands carefully, and began to play. Not one of the simple songs she'd taught him. Something else. Something more complex. Maya's eyes widened. It was a lullaby. A beautiful, haunting lullaby that she'd played for him just once 2 weeks ago. She hadn't taught him this one because it was too difficult. But somehow he'd remembered it. He'd learned it just from listening to her play it that one time. The boy's fingers stumbled occasionally, and he didn't get all the notes right, but the melody was there. Clear and recognizable and absolutely miraculous. When he finished, Ethan looked up at her with pride shining in his eyes, waiting for her reaction. Maya felt tears streaming down her cheeks. "That was beautiful," she whispered. "Ethan, that was so beautiful." "You're amazing," the boy beamed. Actually beamed. It was the first real smile she'd seen from him. What neither of them noticed was Richard Chen standing in the doorway. He'd stopped hiding today, drawn by the complexity of the music his son was playing. He stood there openly, tears in his own eyes, watching this village girl praise his son with such genuine warmth and pride. And in that moment, Richard Chen realized something that would change everything. This wasn't just about his son anymore. Somewhere along the way, watching Maya's kindness, her patience, her pure love for music and for helping a broken child heal, Richard had started to feel something he thought died with his wife. He'd started to feel hope. Not just for his son, but for himself too. But that same night, everything almost fell apart. Because Maya's mother called with news that would force her to make an impossible choice. The phone call came at 9 in the evening. Maya was in her shared room mending a torn uniform when one of the other staff members knocked on her door. "Maya, phone call for you." "It's your mother." "She sounds upset." Maya's heart dropped. Phone calls from home were rare. They didn't have a phone in their village house. Her mother must have walked to the neighbor's place to use theirs. And she only did that when something was wrong. Maya ran to the staff phone in the hallway, her hands trembling as she picked up the receiver. "Mama?" Her mother's voice came through broken and thick with tears. "Maya, Beta, it's your father. He collapsed at the construction site this morning. They took him to the district hospital." The world seemed to tilt. Is he alive?" Yes, but Maya, the doctors say he needs surgery. Something about his spine. The injury from last year, it got worse. If he doesn't get the operation, He might not walk again. But the cost? Her mother's voice broke completely. The cost is more than we could earn in 2 years. And they want half the money up front before they'll even schedule it. Maya sank against the wall, the phone pressed to her ear. How much? When her mother said the number, Maya felt like she couldn't breathe. It was impossible. Even with her salary, even if she sent home every single rupee she earned, it would take years to save that much. The hospital gave us 1 week, her mother continued, crying openly now. 1 week to arrange the money or they'll discharge him. And Maya, if he can't work, if he can't walk, I don't know how we'll survive. Your brother and sister, their school fees are due. We're already 3 months behind on the house rent. The landlord is threatening to throw us out. Maya closed her eyes. She could picture it all so clearly. Her father lying in a hospital bed in pain. Her mother trying to be strong. Her little brother and sister scared and confused. Their whole world crumbling. I'll come home, Maya said quietly. I'll quit my job here and come back. We'll figure something out together. But Beta, your salary here, it won't matter if I'm not there with you. We're a family. I'm coming home. After she hung up, Maya sat on the floor in that hallway for a long time. She thought about Ethan, about how much progress he'd made. She thought about the music room and those afternoon sessions that had become the best part of her days. She thought about the beautiful piano she'd never play again, but mostly she thought about her father. The man who'd worked his fingers to the bone to feed them, who'd never complained about the pain in his back because the family needed his income, who'd smiled proudly when Maya won that piano competition, even though they both knew she'd never get to use the scholarship. She had no choice. Family came first. It always did. The next morning, Maya went to Mrs. Kapoor's office early before her shift started. She'd written a simple resignation letter on a piece of notebook paper. Her hands shook as she held it. Mrs. Kapoor, I need to speak with you. The head housekeeper looked up from her morning tea. What is it, child? You look terrible. I have to quit. My father is very sick and my family needs me. I can work the rest of this week if you need me to train someone else, but then I have to go home. Mrs. Kapoor's expression softened. I'm sorry to hear about your father. But Maya, are you sure? Jobs like this aren't easy to find. I know. But I don't have a choice, Mrs. Kapoor nodded slowly. Very well. I'll process your resignation. But you should say goodbye to young Ethan first. He's grown quite attached to you. That was the part Maya had been dreading most. How could she explain to a child who didn't speak, who was just starting to heal, that she was leaving? At 3 o'clock, Maya walked to the music room for what she knew would be the last time. Her eyes were already red from crying. She'd stuffed her few belongings into a bag. Tomorrow morning, she'd take the early bus back to her village and probably never return to the city again. Ethan was waiting by the piano, as always. When he saw her face, his smile immediately disappeared. Children could sense things, Maya knew. They could feel when something was wrong. She sat beside him on the piano bench, trying to find the right words. Ethan, I have something to tell you. Something sad. The boy watched her face intently. My father is very sick. He needs me to come home and take care of him. So I have to leave. I have to stop working here. Her voice cracked. I have to stop our piano lessons. Ethan's eyes went wide. He shook his head violently, grabbing her arm. I'm so sorry. I don't want to go, but I have to. My family needs me. The boy's face crumpled. His breathing became fast and panicked. He clutched her hand tighter, shaking his head over and over. Tears started streaming down his cheeks. I know, Maya whispered, her own tears flowing freely now. I'm going to miss you so much. But you're going to be okay. You're so talented, Ethan. You play beautifully. You don't need me anymore. Ethan stood up suddenly, still holding her hand. He pulled her toward the piano desperately, as if music could somehow fix this, as if playing together one more time could make her stay. Maya let him pull her. She sat down and began to play a song, one of the folk melodies from her village, a song about saying goodbye. Ethan sat beside her and she showed him the notes. They played it together, his small fingers following her lead, and then something extraordinary happened. Something that made Maya stop playing mid-song. Ethan opened his mouth and spoke. His voice was rough from months of silence, barely more than a whisper, but the words were clear. Don't go. Maya stared at him in shock. You spoke? Don't go, he said again, louder this time. His small face was twisted with emotion, tears running down his cheeks. Please don't go. I need you. Maya pulled the boy into a hug, both of them crying. Oh, Ethan, your voice. You found your voice. She didn't hear the footsteps behind them, didn't realize someone else had entered the room until a deep voice spoke. You gave me back my son's voice and you were going to leave without telling me why? Maya jumped up, spinning around. Richard Chen stood in the doorway. She'd seen him from a distance before, but never this close. He was tall and imposing in his expensive suit, but his eyes were wet with tears. Mr. Chen, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to intrude. I know I shouldn't have been teaching Ethan, but he seemed so sad and I just wanted to help and... Stop apologizing, Richard said quietly. He walked into the room, his eyes on his son. Ethan, did you just speak? The boy nodded, wiping his tears. She can't leave, Dad. Please don't let her leave. Richard's face showed such raw emotion that Maya had to look away. The powerful businessman knelt down in front of his son. Why don't you want her to leave? Because she makes the sadness go away. When she plays piano, I don't miss Mom as much, and she's teaching me and I want to learn more. Ethan's words came tumbling out now, months of silence breaking all at once. She's nice to me. She doesn't look at me like I'm broken. Richard looked up at Maya. Why are you leaving? Maya explained about her father, about the surgery, about the impossible medical bills and her family's desperate situation. She tried to keep her voice steady, but it was hard. I have to go home. They need me. How much? Richard asked. I'm sorry? How much does the surgery cost? How much do you need? Maya shook her head. Mr. Chen, I appreciate the concern, but it's a very large amount. I couldn't possibly. How much? He repeated firmly. She told him the number and he didn't even blink. He pulled out his phone and made a call right there. Yes, this is Richard Chen. I need you to wire money to a hospital immediately. He looked at Maya. Which hospital? Maya told him, feeling like she was in a dream. This couldn't be real. Richard gave instructions on the phone, then hung up. It's done. The hospital will receive full payment within the hour. Your father's surgery is covered. Maya felt her knees go weak. I can't accept that. It's too much. Consider it an employee benefit, Richard said. But I have a condition. Of course there was a condition. Maya braced herself. Stay. Not just as housekeeping staff. I want to hire you officially as Ethan's music teacher and companion. You'll receive a proper salary, benefits, and your family's medical expenses will be covered going forward. Maya couldn't speak. She couldn't even process what he was saying. You gave my son something no amount of money could buy. Richard continued, his voice thick with emotion. You gave him hope. You gave him music. You gave him his voice back. Please don't leave. Ethan grabbed her hand again. Please, Maya, please stay. She looked at the boy's tear-stained face, then at Richard Chen's sincere expression. She thought about her father getting the surgery he needed, her family's debts being paid, her siblings staying in school. She thought about this music room and this beautiful piano and this child who'd somehow found his way into her heart. I'll stay, she whispered. But I need to call my mother first. She'll be so worried. Use my personal phone, Richard said, handing it to her. Call her right now. As Maya stepped into the hallway to make the call, her hands shaking with relief and disbelief, she didn't see the way Richard Chen looked at her, the way his eyes followed her with an expression that went beyond gratitude. And she didn't see the small smile on Ethan's face as he sat at the piano and began to play the goodbye song she'd taught him. Except now it wasn't a goodbye anymore. Now it was a new beginning. The next 6 months changed Maya's life in ways she never could have imagined. She moved from the crowded staff quarters into a small but comfortable room in a separate wing of the estate. It had its own bathroom, a real bed with soft pillows and a window that looked out over the garden. Sometimes Maya would wake up in the morning and forget where she was, thinking she was still in her village home. Her mother called every week now, always crying happy tears. Maya's father had successfully completed his surgery and was slowly learning to walk again with physical therapy. Her brother and sister were excelling in school, no longer worried about being pulled out to work. The family had even moved into a better house, one with proper plumbing and electricity that didn't cut out every other day. But Maya insisted on keeping some of her old duties. Despite Richard Chen's protests, she still helped with light cleaning in the music room and a few other areas. She couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't deserve all this kindness, that she needed to earn her place somehow. You're stubborn, Mrs. Kapoor told her one morning, shaking her head but smiling. The master pays you well to teach his son not to scrub floors. It keeps me grounded, Maya replied. Reminds me where I came from. What consumed most of Maya's time now was Ethan. The boy had transformed completely from the silent, sad child she'd first encountered. He talked constantly now, making up for all those months of silence. He told Maya stories about his mother, about memories he'd kept locked inside. He talked about his favorite foods, his dreams, the things he wanted to learn, and he was hungry to learn everything. Not just piano, though that remained his greatest passion. He wanted Maya to teach him the folk songs from her village. He wanted to hear stories about her childhood. He asked endless questions about life outside the walls of the estate. Maya taught him more complex pieces on the piano. She borrowed music books from the city library, simple classical compositions that challenged him but didn't overwhelm. Ethan practiced for hours each day, his small fingers growing stronger and more confident on the keys. But the most surprising change was in Richard Chen himself. The man Maya had thought was cold and distant turned out to be nothing of the sort. He started coming to the music room during their lessons, at first just standing in the doorway, then gradually moving closer. He'd sit in one of the chairs by the window and watch his son play, his face soft with pride and lingering grief. Sometimes he'd stay after Ethan went to do his other schoolwork, and he'd talk with Maya. Real conversations, not the formal exchanges between employer and employee. He asked about her family, her village, her dreams. He told her about his late wife, how she'd loved music, how the piano had been her sanctuary. "She would have loved you," Richard said one evening, his voice quiet. She would have loved seeing Ethan like this, so full of life again. Maya didn't know what to say to that. She just nodded, feeling the weight of the grief this man still carried. As weeks turned into months, Maya began to notice something confusing. The way Richard looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. The way he'd smile at her jokes, real smiles that reached his eyes. The way he'd find excuses to be in the music room during lesson times. And if she was being completely honest with herself, she'd started looking forward to those moments too. The conversations that stretched long after Ethan went to bed. The walks in the garden when Richard would ask her opinion on things, treating her thoughts as valuable. The rare moments when their hands would accidentally brush and she'd feel her heart skip. But Maya pushed these feelings down hard. This was dangerous territory. Richard Chen was her employer, a wealthy and powerful man. She was just a village girl, a servant who'd gotten lucky. Whatever kindness he showed her was gratitude for helping his son, nothing more. To think otherwise was foolish and would only lead to heartbreak. One Saturday afternoon, Richard asked if Maya would like to bring her family to visit the estate. "Ethan talks about meeting your siblings constantly," he said, "and I'd like to thank your parents personally for raising such a remarkable daughter." Maya's eyes filled with tears. "That's very kind of you, Mr. Chen." "Richard," he corrected gently. "After all these months, I think you can call me Richard." The visit happened 2 weeks later. Maya's parents arrived looking overwhelmed and uncomfortable in their simple village clothes. Her little brother and sister clung to their mother, eyes wide at the massive house. But Richard greeted them with such warmth and genuine respect that they slowly relaxed. Ethan dragged Maya's siblings to the music room immediately, eager to show off what he'd learned. "Listen to this," he said, launching into a folk song Maya had taught him. "Your sister is the best teacher in the whole world." Maya's brother, who was 9, was fascinated by the piano. "Can you teach me too?" he asked Maya shyly. "Of course," Maya said, pulling him onto the bench beside her. Richard stood in the doorway watching, something shifting in his chest. He watched Maya with her family, the easy affection, the way her whole face lit up with joy. He watched her teach her brother with the same patience she showed Ethan, and he realized something he'd been trying to deny for months. He was falling in love with her. Maybe had already fallen. The realization terrified him. It felt like a betrayal of his late wife's memory. But his wife's last words to him, spoken in the hospital before the machine started failing, echoed in his mind. "Don't be alone forever, Richard. Promise me. Find happiness again. Find love again." At the time, drowning in grief, he'd barely heard her. Now those words came back with crystal clarity. That evening, after Maya's family had left, Richard found her in the music room. She was sitting at the piano but not playing, just running her fingers over the keys thoughtfully. "Your family is lovely," Richard said. Maya smiled. "They were so nervous. My father kept calling you sir even though you told him not to. He's proud of you. They all are. I'm proud of them too. My father walked without his cane today. Did you see? The physical therapy is really working. Richard sat down beside her on the piano bench. It was something he'd never done before, and Maya's breath caught slightly at his closeness. Maya, can I ask you something personal? Of course. Are you happy here? Truly happy? Not just grateful for the job, but actually happy? Maya turned to look at him, surprised by the intensity in his eyes. Yes, she said honestly. I never expected any of this. Teaching Ethan, living in this beautiful place, having my family taken care of. It's more than I ever dreamed of. And if you could have anything else, anything at all, what would it be? The question hung in the air between them. Maya's heart was pounding. She could feel the shift in the atmosphere, something unspoken but powerful. I don't know, she whispered. I've learned not to want too much. Wanting things you can't have only leads to pain. Richard reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and took her hand. What if I told you that I've been watching you all these months, not just as Ethan's teacher, but as someone remarkable? Someone who makes this house feel like a home again? Someone who makes me feel like maybe I'm allowed to be happy again? Maya's eyes widened. Mr. Chen, Richard, I don't understand. I think you do, he said softly. I think you feel it too. This thing between us. I've tried to ignore it, tried to tell myself it was just gratitude. But it's more than that, Maya. Much more. Maya pulled her hand back gently, standing up from the bench. Her mind was racing, her emotions a confused tangle. This isn't right. You're my employer, and I'm nobody. A village girl who happened to play piano. You're not nobody. Richard stood too, his voice firm but gentle. You're the woman who saved my son. You're kind and talented and genuine in a world full of people who pretend. Stop, Maya said, tears springing to her eyes. Please stop. You don't know what you're saying. The world doesn't work like this. People from my world and people from your world, we don't belong together. Why not? Because. Maya's voice rose with frustration and fear. Because everyone would say I'm taking advantage, that I planned this somehow. Because your friends and family would never accept a poor village girl. Because I don't know how to be in your world, Richard. I don't know which fork to use at fancy dinners or how to talk to important people, or any of the things your wife probably knew. Richard stepped closer. My wife grew up in a small town, daughter of a school teacher. She felt the same way when we first met. But she learned that none of that matters. What matters is what's in here. He placed his hand over his heart. And what I feel in here tells me that you're someone special. Someone I want in my life, in Ethan's life, not just as an employee, but as more. I need to think, Maya said, backing toward the door. This is too much. I need time. Take all the time you need, Richard said. But Maya, know this. I'm not confused about my feelings. I know what I want. The question is, what do you want? Maya fled the music room, her heart pounding, her mind in chaos. She ran to her room and closed the door, sliding down to sit on the floor. What did she want? She wanted things she had no right to want. She wanted more afternoons in the music room. More conversations that made her laugh. More of those moments when Richard smiled at her like she mattered. She wanted to matter to him, not as an employee or even just as Ethan's teacher, but as a woman. But wanting something and deserving it were two different things, and Maya wasn't sure she deserved this kind of happiness. She wasn't sure the world would let a village girl and a CEO find their way to each other without tearing them apart. Sleep didn't come easily that night. For 3 days, Maya avoided Richard. She threw herself into teaching Ethan. Spent extra time helping in the kitchen and made sure she was never alone in any room where Richard might find her. Mrs. Kapoor noticed but said nothing. Though her knowing looks made Maya's cheeks burn, Ethan noticed too. Why doesn't Dad come to lessons anymore? He asked on the 3rd day, his small face confused. Did you two have a fight? No, sweetheart, Maya said, forcing a smile. He's just busy with work. He's not busy. He's sad. I can tell. Ethan played a few notes on the piano, then stopped. He looks the same way he did after Mom died. Like something important is missing. Maya's heart clenched. She hadn't meant to hurt Richard. She just needed time to sort out her confused feelings, to figure out if what she felt was real or just gratitude mixed with loneliness. That evening, Maya sat in the garden on one of the stone benches. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She'd come here to think, away from the house and all its memories. This was my wife's favorite spot. Maya jumped. Richard stood a few feet away, hands in his pockets. looking uncertain in a way she'd never seen before. The powerful CEO seemed almost vulnerable. "I'm sorry," Maya said, starting to stand. "I'll go." "Please don't. I've been trying to give you space, but I can't anymore." "Maya, I need to know. Are you avoiding me because you don't feel the same way or because you're afraid?" Maya sat back down slowly. Richard took it as permission and sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance between them. "I'm afraid," she admitted quietly. "Of so many things. How to tell me?" The words came spilling out. "I'm afraid people will think I'm a gold digger, that I manipulated my way into this position. I'm afraid your family and friends will look down on me. I'm afraid I'll embarrass you at important events because I don't know how to act. I'm afraid that one day you'll wake up and realize I'm just an ordinary village girl who got lucky." Richard listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long moment. "My wife used to sit here every evening," he finally said. "Before she died, when she knew she didn't have much time left, we sat right here on this bench. She made me promise something." Maya looked at him, seeing the grief still etched in his features. "She made me promise to find love again, to not let fear keep me locked away. She said life was too short to spend it alone, too precious to waste being afraid of what other people think." Richard turned to face Maya fully. "She also told me something else. She said when I found the right person, I'd know because they'd make Ethan smile. They'd make our house feel like a home again. They'd see me, really see me, not my money or my position." "Richard, you've done all of that, Maya. From the very first day when you played that piano not knowing anyone was watching. You weren't trying to impress anyone. You were just being yourself, sharing something you loved. That's who you are. Genuine, kind, beautiful inside and out." Tears rolled down Maya's cheeks. "But what about all the differences between us?" "My wife grew up poor," Richard said. "Her father was a school teacher in a small town. When I first brought her to business dinners, she was terrified. She used the wrong fork, called my business partner by the wrong name, spilled wine on an important client's wife." He smiled at the memory. "But you know what? None of that mattered, because she was brave enough to try. And the people who truly mattered in my life loved her for who she was, not where she came from. What about the people who didn't accept her? They weren't worth keeping in our lives." Richard reached out and gently took Maya's hand. This time she didn't pull away. "Maya, I can't promise you that everyone will accept us. Some people will judge. Some will talk. But I can promise you this. I will stand beside you through all of it. I will never let anyone make you feel less than the remarkable woman you are." Maya looked down at their joined hands. His was larger, rougher despite his wealth, bearing the weight of all he'd carried. Hers was smaller, calloused from years of work, honest and real. "I'm scared," she whispered. "I'm scared too," Richard admitted. "Scared of loving again and losing again. Scared of not being enough. But I'm more scared of letting you slip away because I was too afraid to fight for what I want." "What do you want?" "You. Ethan wants you. Not as an employee, not as just a teacher. As part of our family. As someone we love." The word hung in the air between them. Love. It was terrifying and wonderful all at once. "I think I love you too," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "I've been trying not to, telling myself it was impossible. But I can't help it." Richard lifted her hand and kissed it gently. "Then stop fighting it. Stop fighting us." They sat there as the sun finished setting, holding hands, letting the truth settle between them. It wasn't a fairy tale moment with fireworks and dramatic music. It was quiet and real and perfect in its simplicity. The next morning, Ethan burst into Maya's room before she was even fully awake. "Dad told me," he shouted, jumping onto her bed. "He told me you're going to stay forever, that you might become my new mom." Maya's eyes went wide. "Ethan, we need to take things slow." "I don't want to take things slow. I want you to be my mom now." The boy's eyes were shining with happiness. "Is that okay?" "Can I call you that?" Maya pulled him into a hug, tears streaming down her face. "Let's start with Maya for now. But Ethan, I'm not going anywhere. I promise." The months that followed weren't always easy. Richard introduced Maya to his business associates, and she could feel some of their judgment, see it in their polite but cold smiles. There were whispered comments, carefully worded questions about how they met. Some of Richard's relatives made their disapproval clear, but there were beautiful moments too. Richard's late wife's parents came to visit, and Maya was terrified to meet them. But the elderly couple took one look at Ethan, so happy and healthy and full of life, and they hugged Maya with tears in their eyes. "You gave us our grandson back," Ethan's grandmother said. "That's all that matters." Maya's own family visited more regularly. Her father, now walking without any aid, would sit in the garden with Richard. Two men from different worlds finding common ground in their love for their children. Her mother and Mrs. Kapoor became unexpected friends, swapping recipes and stories. 6 months after that conversation in the garden, Richard proposed. Not with a grand gesture or public display. He proposed on the piano bench in the music room, while Ethan played a song they'd all learned together. The ring was beautiful but not ostentatious, a simple band with a single stone. "I don't need the biggest diamond," Maya had told him once. "I just need something real." The wedding was small. Not the society event Richard's first wedding had been, but an intimate ceremony in the estate's garden. Maya wore a simple white dress that her mother had helped her choose. Ethan stood between them during the ceremony, holding both their hands, part of the promises they were making. Maya's village priest performed the ceremony alongside a city official, blending both their worlds. Her family sat on one side, Richard's small circle of true friends and family on the other. But in the end, there were no sides. Just people who loved them, celebrating their happiness. The reception was held in the house with music from both the village folk band and a classical quartet. Ethan performed a piano piece, a folk melody Maya had taught him, played on the same piano where everything had begun. As Maya danced with Richard, she caught sight of her reflection in one of the large windows. She looked different from the scared village girl who'd first stepped into this house, but she also looked exactly the same. Still herself, just braver. Still simple, just loved. "What are you thinking?" Richard asked, following her gaze. "I'm thinking about that first day, when I played the piano because I couldn't help myself, when I was so scared of losing this job, and now I'm not scared anymore." "Well, maybe a little, but I'm learning that being scared and being brave aren't opposites. You can be both at the same time." Richard pulled her closer. "You've always been brave. From that very first day." Later that night, after the guests had left and Ethan had finally fallen asleep, exhausted from excitement, Maya found herself back in the music room. She sat at the piano and played the same folk song she'd played that first afternoon, the melody that had started everything. Richard appeared in the doorway, just like Ethan had all those months ago. But this time there were no tears, just a smile full of love and promise. "Play it again," he said, coming to sit beside her. And Maya did. She played while Richard listened, their shoulders touching, their hearts finally in the same place. The music filled the room and drifted out through the open windows, carrying the story of a simple village girl who'd played piano for a lonely boy and found a family, a home, and a love she'd never dared to dream of. The piano that had once gathered dust now sang every day. The house that had been silent with grief was now filled with laughter and music and life. And Maya, who'd spent her whole life in the shadows, had finally stepped into the light. Not because she'd changed who she was, but because she'd found people who loved her for exactly who she'd always been. A girl who couldn't resist beautiful music. A woman with a kind heart. A teacher who saw broken children and chose to help them heal. In the end, that had been enough. More than enough. It had been everything.